basically, and she I have to say it in patois. Adam, what you want for breakfast? That means what do you want for breakfast? And she said, you want, like she said, you want pancake? Apple pancakes because of the apple. And he said, me no want no more apple because he's fed up of apples. So basically it went on until, you know, she was saying, if you don't like me cooking, basically, find another woman. He says, how can I find another woman? You was the only woman in the earth, kind of thing. And then it finishes off that the serpent comes round and says, because she's annoying him, take back the rib, because she's come from his rib. And then he just takes it back and she collapses. Now, the African Caribbean community think that's hilarious. And that's what the kind of thing that the game was modelled on. So I think, you know, we know that previous research hasn't really done what it should have done. We know that cancer outreach in the city hasn't really reached BME and low-income men. So this game is reaching them. We're going to be launching a prostate cancer community clinic in 2 African Caribbean centres because we're so concerned about getting them tested. We're going to be announcing that on November the 19th. And the game is going to be a part of reaching those men. It's going to be at the African Caribbean National Autistic Centre once a month in Marcus Garvey. And we are also going to be, it's going to be funded by the CCGs, Clinical Commissioning Groups. And we're also going to be trying to get that game into the barber shops. The CCGs are quite keen to see it, like on little iPads, to actually play when the men are actually waiting to have their hair done. And we can take it to the hairdressers as well, because women are just as important about raising it. So thank you, Royden and Fab and Manley and Elijah for supporting everything. And just understand that when we're dealing with this, it has to be from a culturally competent perspective. Everybody might not understand it, but actually we've got quite a lot of men from St. Anne's and other places. It's not just black men that you've got in the group, is it, Royden? You've got other men who mix with black men, who understand the language, who would identify with it as well.
Yeah. Recently, over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, not taking too much time. Yeah. Recently, over the last, regarding the Patois language and being culturally sensitive and relevant, in Jamaica, where of course the Patois language is highly used, the Holy Bible, the whole of the Bible, has been translated into Patois language for the Jamaican people. So really, there's, to think or say it's racist by having something, it's like saying to the Chinese, oh, someone shouldn't speak to them in Chinese because it's racist. I mean, that's dim, isn't it? You know, so having something that communicates to the people relevant is really necessary. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer 3 years ago. I'm still here because of the early warning system that Rose promotes. So that's what, that qualifies me here now to say something, yeah? All right.
Thank you.
So Rose has just finished the talk, all the slides that are coming, and done it so much better, but thank you very much. So we looked at opportunities for co-design. And first of all, I think Roy didn't mention Sarah's talk, and she interviewed 20 men, of which I think 18 were Jamaican, with and without prostate cancer, and they did really find out that there was a taken for granted inference that the digital rectal examination was a barrier to early diagnosis and therefore had an impact. And we need to deal with this very sensitively and openly within the game. And we can't do that without the community. All the game's characters, as Rose was saying, were designed by Patty Dumpling, the Lisa Jackson characters. And they've also been used in huge other health campaigns for the community, for the British Heart Foundation, the Equation Project on domestic violence, and the Bright Ideas Project dealing with young experiences of NHS services. Then we had all the rules created in the game, and this is where the rules reason with the responses from the men to produce direct and relevant and personalised feedback. And all the content was developed by this multidisciplinary team. There were psychologists, Sarah, there were the guys from FAB, there was Rose, there were computer scientists, there were urologists, Professor Khan as well, to make sure that all the messages are appropriately framed really to show that early intervention can have a really strong effect and potentially save your life. It's about getting the information out there in a way the community will respond to. So let's give you a live demo. Nick is at the back, and he's going to show you a couple of snippets from the game.
Hi folks. Yes, I'm going to jump around the game a bit here, so I'll try and give you a flavour of how it all works. So if we just jump straight in, we have the game split into eight sections. An introduction, introducing the characters, a discussion of the risks of prostate cancer, gathering some information about how much concern the player has. Then we start gathering information about family history, about urinary symptoms. We have some information given about what the PSA test involves. Then the DRE, the digital rectal examination, and finally a conclusion where we have a summary of the of what the players' choices mean for the kind of risk that they're at. And it generally encourages you, if you have any worries, go and talk to your doctor. So we'll start off at the introduction and meet the characters.
Hello and welcome to my barbershop. My name is Vincent and I give the best haircut in town.
Hi, I'm Carl and I'm just here for a quick haircut. And my name is Enos Vincent Brother and I'm here for causing problems.
Hello my youth. How do you do? Long time me no see you.
I'm alright there, Vincent. I'm all good, man. Usual, please.
Oh, here come Patty Dumpling.
Oh, hello. Me hope you behaving on yourself.
What, Patty Dumpling? Anybody tell you you're looking real nice today?
Thanks. Your sweetheart don't get you everywhere.
So apart from your good self, Patty Dumpling, what you have for we today?
Oh, just me smile. And wait. You have some leaflet about the prostate. Too many of women dying from the prostate cancer when there is no need. So all of you must take heed. You hear what I said? Anyhow, is a man me a look about.
Oh, see what right here, so?
Me not just looking about any man. Me looking for Mr. Bates. He just disappeared. You see him?
Patty Dumpling, a big woman like you, I play hide and seek.
A long time I don't see him, my dear.
Thanks. And remember, my friends and brethren, take care of yourself and your prostate, all right?
There's a little bit of work still to be done on this version.
Enos, where you go with your screw face? You gonna run down Patty Dumpling?
Me need to pay.
So why you can't find better word to use in front of me customer them?
Me would have said a number one, but him too fast with the razor.
Which part, Enos? You don't have no ear, just like you don't have no woman. He meant picky.
You're not easy, man. Me got to sit right back down. You got to put me right off of it now.
You know how many times you get up and sit down? If you got toilet, and if Wellington boot, they've just wear out the carpet. You not see it? Me carpet favor in picky head. My youth, remind me how you usual again.
So this is the first user interaction. This is just to get us into the swing of using the selection mechanism, so we can choose between 3 haircuts. I'll have a polished fade.
Of course, my youth. Lift up on your neck. Let me fix the cape around you good. Enos.
I'm just going to skip out of there and move on to...
Enos.
Skip out of there. That didn't do what I expected it to do. We'll come back in. Sorry about this. Best laid plans. So I now want to just go into gathering a bit about family history, then we'll have a look at how the information is displayed, and then we'll go through the conclusion. So if I go to family history...
Let me ask now, think about it. Whether your brother, your father, or your grandfather had the prostate cancer. No, don't know. Yes. Yes. Do you know roughly what age they did get a diagnosis? Yes, yes. And tell me your age. How old is you? What about your sister, your mother, or your granny? Any of them have the breast cancer? No. Okay, okay. That's all she asked me about the family history. Then she asked me about if me have urinary problem. You know, problem with me water work then? Oh, well, what kind of problems? Well, she asked some question then about if me think me urination good or not as good as it used to. Well, the doctor asked me some question then about my experience over the last month. Things like how often me have to pee, how difficult it is for me to pee, and how often me need to go a toilet at night time. Over the last month.
So if while we're playing the game, we're able to review our answers, and once we've played through the game, we can modify our answers without going through the whole of the game again. So there's our responses on the age and so on. The IPSS is the International Prostate Symptoms Score, and this determines how enlarged or how enlarged a prostate might be, or how heavy prostate problems might be. So we can, as you can see here, I've not answered any of these, so I can actually go in here and quickly answer these. Each of these has the question, and so I can review my result, my answers, as well as playing through the game once I've been through it once. And with all of those things, my quality of life is pretty unhappy, I'd say. So once we've done that,
well, the doctor asked me some question then.
This is where this is made for a mobile phone, and I've built this for a PC, and it's not behaving quite how I anticipated it. So I'm going to just quit again and start again, so we go through you can jump to the end rather than go through another 6 or 7 minutes of discussion.
Whilst you're doing that, can you say that the men wanted more animation in it, but that's going to cost more, so we start where we start, don't we, David?
Yep, we are working on the animation now. We're putting in other grant applications, which we're going to start doing with the whole team here, with Fab, with Rose, with Sarah. And what we're going to do next, actually, is look at the game, the impact of the game in the community, and also some other tools that we've developed aimed at clinicians, which use computational intelligence, and tackle the problem from both ends, from raising awareness in the community and getting the symptomatic men to present to doctors, and also work on clinicians, because their prediction of prostate cancer isn't that good using PSA. And from both sides, we think we can have a real impact on prostate cancer in the community.
We have started working on some of the comments that we had from the meeting in March. It's been a little slow because we've been off over the summer and been quite involved in other projects, but one of the comments was that Enos was a bit too scruffy, and all the characters are rather older than the target group. So you might notice if you've seen the app before that these characters have changed from how they were when we demoed the app, and we're proceeding to do the other additions. I've started implementing animation, and you'll see that Vincent does have some animation. He blinks now. I had animated his mouth, but it was a bit scary, so I've got to return to that and develop that a bit more. So
Nick, can people see this anytime tomorrow? To have a go and have a look at it on your...
Yeah.
Because we're going to have to carry on to the next presentation.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure some people would really like to see more of this piece of software.
Are you kicking me out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much to the team for that presentation. I'm sorry it ran out of time. Because now we've got to start the last presentation of the afternoon, try and keep to time. And who is it who's giving the presentation? Was it Isabel? Richard? Oh, okay, sorry, Richard. Do you need the roving mic? Or are you the sort of person that would stand here? Are you all coming up on the stage? Brilliant. Okay, so over to Richard for the last presentation, and this is on practice-led critical reflection on the ethics of an Internet of soft things. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. An Internet of Soft Things. This was our stall here, so you might have heard a little bit about us at lunchtime. There we go. So the aims of the project were to develop a co-design methodology for multidisciplinary design teams. Quite a lot of information in this statement, but particularly focusing on the mental health sector, and we're trying to approach it from a person-centred perspective. The presentation is going to be in 3 parts. I'm going to do the first part, a little bit of background, and how we moved from our pilot study to our workshops. Then I'm going to hand over to Isabel, who's going to talk a little bit about our filmmaking process, and Sarah will talk a bit about how we reflected and the importance that we feel reflexivity has on research. Sorry, that was the next slide. Does this work? Does this work? Sorry. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay, so that's what I've just said. This statement here, we felt was very important. I come from a psychotherapy background, and this is from particularly about psychotherapy research, but we feel extendable to all research. It's important that as researchers we're aware of our own values and beliefs. So for example, the other week I was at a conference where 2 of us were talking about mental health, and the speaker before me was a psychiatrist. And she said it's important to understand that in psychiatry we're working against human nature, she said. She said we've got to understand that people are essentially lazy and greedy. And I was going, what? And because in my next talk I was talking about how from the person-centred approach we would assume that people are trustworthy and that people have inner resources that they can use, so quite a different perspective. We found the counselling ethical framework quite useful. So this is available online, and there's 2 things we're going to look at, particularly in the talk today. One, we were very keen to focus on the autonomy of the participant, their right to be self-governing. And in a way, in research, people sign informed consent and so on, and it might be obvious that they are self-governing. They have the right to do what they wish and feel how they feel and say what they want to say. But what we wanted to build into the project was a real attention to that and to check at all stages of the research that the individual really was able to say and communicate to us how they were feeling, what their views were about what they were doing, what their experience was. And the other part of this framework that we thought was important was self-respect. So this is in terms of the researcher's role. There's a responsibility on the researcher to be aware of their own attitudes and beliefs and to develop themselves personally, and also to take care of themselves. So it can be quite difficult working with mental health, and we need to be able to step back from it and look after ourselves. So a little bit about person-centered approach. I've already mentioned trust. Important to maybe highlight the three conditions if you don't know them. Carl Rogers set up a framework. He said these are facilitative conditions. In this kind of relationship, it's important that we are able to empathise with people, to empathically understand where they're coming from, to offer them warmth and to kind of value their experience, but also to be genuine ourselves. So if we get asked stuff, not to kind of hide or say, I'm not going to tell you, or I'm not going to discuss that, but to be willing to bring yourself to the process. It's important to say that the person-centered approach isn't a deficit model. It's not saying that people have a disease or that there's anything wrong with them. And nice little quote there at the end, it's not that this approach gives power to the person, it's just that it never takes it away. Little bit about sorry about the technical hitch, there we go. A little bit about the project. So we did a pilot study. You can read it for yourself, and then a smart textile workshops at Mind, the mental health charity, which has bases in Worksop, another place in Nottingham, but we focus on Worksop. Okay. There's just 3 slides I'm going to go through quickly here. Practice-led critical reflection. So one of the important things, I think Isabel's going to talk a bit more about informed consent, but the group agreement, we ask people, how do you want to be in a group? How do you want to treat each other? How do you want to be treated? What are your hopes and fears? And it was important for us to listen to that, partly for their safety, their psychological, their emotional safety, and then partly so that we could be trustworthy. We knew what their concerns were, and we could try and fulfill how people wanted to be in the group. Next one. We found that as facilitators, there were quite a lot of us in the group. The ideal scenario seemed to be we gravitated towards working one-to-one with people, and that happened in quite a natural way, and the pairs formed quite naturally. We felt it was very important in terms of data that we offered a great variety of methods, because just as people have different learning styles, they have different communication styles, so we gave people different kinds of sheets they could fill in, different things they could attach to things. Very important to have a variety of methods so we could capture their experience, I suppose. The debrief for facilitators, this is coming back to the self-care that I talked about a little bit earlier. It felt very important to us that we were able to talk to each other about our experience of being in the workshop. And this was an opportunity for critical reflection. Some people just did it verbally in the session, others kind of wrote up their reflections afterwards. But it was important there, I talked about person-centered supervision then. So when we talk about the empathy and the warmth and the genuineness that we show to the participants, we tried to show that to each other as researchers, particularly because we're a multidisciplinary group. We come from different areas. Okay, so that concludes my little bit of the section. I'm going to hand over to Isabel.
background is in interaction, using body, voice, and also in working with people directly to make artworks on an equal basis. So I was invited to see if I could work on making a piece of film to document the research project. So the first thing was that I felt that if we started out with the idea of saying we were making a film, then lots of expectations would follow that, and it maybe could freeze people in terms of what people expected about a film. So when we first started, we started with the concept of informed choice, because we don't know, do we? If I was to say, I'm going to offer you a drink, and the drink is called red, would you know how that drink tasted? Equally, if I was to say to you, we're going to make a film, you might then draw on previous experience of what you felt a film was, and that might then affect your capacity to make a choice. So it's very much about not just choice, it's about informed choice. And that, I think, shifts, and it's very much something that you don't start with, and it doesn't stay throughout the same, it shifts. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to come up with something where there would be multimedia, so we'd have photographs, we'd have film, we'd have written text, we might have objects, we might have spoken voice, we might have an actor reading text, etc., to allow for a more of a kind of audio-visual work, which we didn't know what it was going to be, which would then allow the process of informed choice to begin to evolve. And so what we started with that, and just coming on to Salamander Tandem's working principles, I set up Salamander Tandem with my father, who was deaf and blind, and we set up the company 25 years ago. And one of the things that was very, very strong for me as a child growing up with a blind person was that he didn't like people talking about him separate from him. He's not here now. But one of the things that we established early on was a set of working principles. And one of the working principles was that he wanted to see himself in the work. And so there was this idea of value being very much attributed to the final artwork, whether it be a painting, a sculpture, a piece of sound or something, that he had to recognise himself in that work. Now, as a totally blind person, that would have offered quite considerable challenges, because my field is dance. So how would we solve that together so that he would reach a point that he would recognise himself in that piece of dance? So these are the sort of questions that we've asked ourselves, and that is one of the working principles. So it was going to be crucial when working with 3 participants who chose to take part in the next stage of the process, who gave their permission to use their names as well, because they are recognised in the work. So this is Chris, this is Elaine, this is Meg. There is a 20-minute film. It's on the internet if you want to watch it. It's turned out to be a film, but that was kind of a longer process, which I'll talk through. So one of the things here was the flexibility in materials, which allowed for the individual to emerge, the idea of individual contributions, the idea of difference, because one of the big challenges was that in terms of informed choice, we said, right, in the final work, see if it's going to go out on YouTube, would you like to see your whole body and hear your whole voice? Would you like to just see your hands? I shouldn't say just see your hands, because actually I thought in my mind, wouldn't it be amazing to have a film based on hands? Wouldn't that be beautiful? But of course, this is written on a sheet of paper, so someone could then tick, I want my hands, I don't want to hear my voice. So Chris chose that he was happy for his hands and his voice to be featured. Elaine, on the other hand, chose that she was happy for her hands, but not her voice. Now, her voice happened to be the most powerful voice of all the 3 people. So I had this incredible dilemma. I'm making now a piece of art, something that's going to be really interesting to people. The one person who's really got that kind of articulate quality, a lot to say, she'd be the one I'd want to put up there on stage. I'd want her to come out in the film. But I didn't have that choice. So then we talked about, well, how might it be that her voice could come out? Voice as in what she said. So roles switched, she took over the recording process and began to interview Sarah. And so all of a sudden it was recalibrated and she was in charge with the headphones, and suddenly the idea of author, me as director of the film, that also had to get kind of put to one side. So a lot of the preconceptions around film, storyboarding, there's a director, there's someone that's got a narrative, there's an idea that it is film, there's an idea that who's in charge, what it's about, that it's a piece of research about other people, all of that had to be put over there. And so what on earth does one end up with? And it's quite a scary process. So this is what person-centred practice is. It's quite nerve-wracking. You don't know what you're going to end up with. So just going through this a little quicker, that there are two stages here. There's the recording part and there's the edit process. And I want to talk about the edit process now with you, because the recording process is very much really about me trying to tune in to the other person. Also tuning in to a project which is about technology. It's about an internet of soft things. It's stuff that I don't know anything about. So it was quite helpful in a way that I was ignorant, because they were the experts. So one of the things that I found was that in the edit process, what decisions was I going to make about cutting, speeding up? And one big challenge was that Chris, who was the first person who said, yeah, I'm happy for my voice to be heard, and I'm happy for my hands to be seen. But Chris on that day didn't feel great. I felt that he was very powerful in terms of the way that he handled the objects. And he had this wonderful sense of sensitivity in his hands. So, but when he spoke, there were large silences and big pauses. Now you can imagine if you're going to make a film that's nice and snappy, you know, a 3-minute slice, a 1-minute kind of a big ad, you know, all about our project, you're not going to want sort of a lot of time of somebody handling an object very, very quietly, silence. How's that going to feel? Are we getting bored? What is it asking of the viewer? What kind of characteristics am I now demanding of you when you view that film? And one of the things I realised that I had to stop being that person with a pulse rate of whatever it was, with an outcome. I had to try to deploy something that Richard said was attunement. And that's my last point, really. The film is a process of attunement, both the edit, the actual interview part. And there are just these points here. It's about breath, it's about body language, it's about the moment by moment checking in, psychological contact, engagement with sharing the work afterwards, with family, with friends. And so one did not necessarily arrive at a product that I'd set out to produce, but I felt that we arrived at something together that was far, far more of a journey for me of beginning to form a relationship with that other person and tune in, and we tuned in together. So that's a little bit about my journey. I'm going to hand over to Sarah now.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think my part of this talk is really about the process of reflection for the people in the project and people involved in the project. And that was an account of Isabel's process of reflection, and all of these are ongoing. We can find the video is here if anybody wants to come and listen to it. We have headphones, or we can unplug it and play it to everybody. And it is available on YouTube, on Salamander Tandem's page, I think, on YouTube. And I'm trying to click next. There we go. So So my part is really this reflecting on reflexivity and trying to build this into projects where it might not, we might think it's normal, but if we're using the person-centered approach, it really foregrounds it, and thinking about what that means for people who are involved in this. You can see in these images on the far right there, there's a sort of pink starfish. And that's an example of one of the things that Richard mentioned, where there were a variety of feedback tools that we developed, sheets of paper with different shapes on them, different dimensions and grading systems that we developed throughout the course of those workshops that suited those particular participants. That particular one started out as the Recovery Star, which is a kind of standard commercialized tool in mental health services, common in Mind, for example. And we found it had too many dimensions, too many grades for these particular workshops, so we redesigned it as we went along. You can also see that Richard gave me for my Christmas a daily mood calendar, and I can flip those pages and say how I'm feeling. I think it's interesting that kind of things like this, put it up as a bit of a joke, but it's actually very difficult to flip through that and find the words that suit how you actually are feeling, because it's quite dynamic. So I think it's quite nice to sort of try and reflect on how our own moods and emotions are shifting as well, and stop trying to kind of pin down our participants in a way that we might not expect to pin down ourselves. There's some words on here that we could talk about for a very long time, but I wanted to draw attention to the idea of non-directivity in the person-centered approach. Richard mentioned very briefly that this is not a disease model, the person-centered approach, and that means, in practical terms, that we're not starting from a diagnosis of an individual condition. So we did not set out to work with, for example, dementia or extreme anxiety as a starting point. We didn't have like a target cohort of individuals in the way that might normally be expected in health research. Instead, it's a very inclusive approach that recognises how people access third sector mental health services rather than mainstream NHS services. So it's a kind of far more inclusive approach to mental health, which recognises that not only are these participants other than us, but we are participants too, and they are researchers too. And that therefore we too are also on this kind of mental health continuum. We have good days, bad days. Some of us have lived experience of more or less significance, I suppose you might put it. Non-directivity is about trying to keep our agenda out of our interactions. Now that might seem completely opposite to what most of us do as researchers. We would normally devise questionnaires and surveys around our research question. In this situation, we're trying not to do that. We are trying to understand what these people's concerns are. So within the team, we did have a moment in our workshops where some people began to say, so when are we going to ask about the conditions? When are we going to ask about these people's anxiety? When are we going to ask how we can help them? And that's a big moment for a kind of the relationships in our team and for kind of an understanding of what the person-centered approach is in research of this type. It's very easy to think that we're giving people freedom in research while actually constraining them, while actually building in our agendas, and I would say that's the instrumental form. David Murphy, who is at the University of Nottingham, is on our advisory board and has developed quite a lot of work around these areas. And the kind of the opposite, the one that we're striving for, is a principled form of non-directivity, where it really is non-directive and we are at great risk of not being able to answer a given research question because it's just not what people are interested in. So it drives actually the methodology of the research, and it means we have to allow the research to be very ground up. So we've borrowed from some design research, some sociology research, the idea of grounded theory as an analysis technique, and we can tell you more about that in discussion if you want. Basically it means that we don't start with our own categories. We're continually revising categories for the analysis of the research. I should start clicking this early, shouldn't I? There we go. But this, we did think this was very important, particularly in working with mental health. And if we go back to, if we bring this back to, actually, this is a methodological question overall. So we are looking at the issues of using this or trying to take a person-centered approach while doing research, and also trying to bring to the design research community an understanding of what the practical issues and emotional issues are if we work with mental health. There's a lot of design with health. It's a really burgeoning field. There is far less with mental health, and there's lots of work to be done. Really struggling with these buttons. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we have to remember, you know, within the team, people are at different kind of levels of experience. We have two very experienced practitioners in psychotherapy on the team. The rest of us, not so much. So there's a kind of element of being aware of each other and supporting each other. We also have to recognise that people might not have signed up for this when they joined the team, you know. It's great to be put onto a research team and get the funding. But if you use words like person-centered approach, it sounds like something you do already. It sounds like we have those values already. But if this is what we're asking people to do, it has to be well supported and sensitively done. People might not want to share thanks very much, and we have to respect that. Others might overshare, and we have to be prepared for that too. And I'm not speaking specifically about our team. I want to make very clear. I think these are probably more general issues about psychotherapy practice. Our pilot study was particularly interesting. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the pilot study revealed an awful lot of stuff about relationships and power relationships, because we did the pilot study on ourselves. We used ourselves because we said, well, that's okay because we're all on the mental health continuum. And by ourselves, I mean a whole collection of professors, readers, postgrad students, practitioners, all experts in their field. But the person-centered approach says you're not so much an expert in skills and your field as you're an expert in your own experience. Also in that group, we did have a few students. We had a few final year students and recent alumni. And variously within the team, there were multiple roles and things got very complex. Just in keeping with, this came out of a conversation recently, Rogers again theorised about stages of communication and the readiness of people to communicate. Zero. The readiness of people to communicate about themselves and how actually they go through a stage of communicating what they think about other people first, and then theory, and finally themselves. And I think that's something that we can explore further within the team, because it seems to be far easier for us to talk about the participants as other rather than ourselves at the moment. But we're almost there. And I'm going to finish there, and I'll probably have to buy everybody a pint after this. So thank you very much.
We might have to answer some questions.
Oh, no.
Thank you very much, team. I'm aware, obviously, it's the end of the afternoon, but I'm sure that you're happy to take a couple of questions now or over that pint that's just been promised. Here's a question over here.
Yes.
So, in co-producing research questions, or I mean, that's other experiences as well. Did you find some of the participants just didn't want that to be explored, or was it, like, my experience is that I'm generally able to be additive, so you can ask the question you want to ask, and you add questions the wider team.
Yeah.
Researchers get what they want, and everybody's research question input is valued.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a confidence that you find that process, you take it out, because that becomes a problem, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, I do agree, and it is another issue, but I suppose we're kind of at being a short project, it's a methodological inquiry, so it's about the methodology, not can the e-tech styles help mental health. So the outcome is not going to be products. or concepts. It's going to be methodological insights into how design can work in a person-centered way. So it's kind of, it's a whole bunch of what the project is not rather than what it is. But the first workshops were basically skills-based and awareness training. So one of the kind of drivers is that we think mental health communities don't have much say in imagining the future, let alone in imagining technological futures. And we believe that the Internet of Things and electronic textiles is one particular form of that. And actually, there's some really nice research that shows that these kinds of crafting workshops around e-textiles are very inclusive in terms of lots of different types of thinking and integrating different holistic experiences in a really positive way. And we've kind of been building on that first. And then the larger design of the project goes into the service design, where participants in the mind community can start to think about this as a network of things which might support their network of services and mental health service access, rather than focusing on objects and products. Does that make some sense? Yeah? Is that all right?
Okay, so thank you very much. I think people may want to see your video. Is it too late for people to see it after our talk, after the talk's finished, or should we wait till tomorrow?
It's a compliment to us.
We're allowed to stay in here?
Yeah, of course we are, yeah.
Okay, well, before Sarah buys you a drink, there will be an opportunity to see the video.
Okay, some just very quick closing remarks. Thank you to all the speakers today, everybody in the workshop. It's really important you all go to the National Video Arcade now. There's huge amounts of wine to be drunk, huge amounts of pizza to be eaten. That includes the students as well. If we don't go, we can't vote on the hackathon, which is going to be happening at 7:30. So please get yourself down to the National Video Arcade. The address is on the bottom of the agenda, and fill your belly and drink as much as you can before you start voting on the hackathon with the hackathon voting system. So I hope to see you all there.
David, is it, you said now, but it's 6 o'clock.
It's 6 o'clock.
Right. So
by the time Sarah buys us drinks,
I see, yeah, right.
That will be 6. We can then roll on down for the wine, eat pizza, Sarah. I don't think I can repeat that really. Okay, so at 6 o'clock, get yourself down to the National Video Arcade, have a tour of the building, huge amounts of games to be played, drink the wine, eat the pizza, but vote on the hackathon. Thank you to all the speakers today and the workshop participants.